Revenge on my wife for me. These words leaped off the page of a letter from my late son, Liam, who had died suddenly, leaving behind what was once a happy marriage. Revenge on my wife for me. The phrase echoed in my mind, accompanied by an unfamiliar address. Is this where Liam wants me to go? I wondered, my tears having ceased, now replaced by cold sweats. I couldn't fathom Liam using a word like revenge. He must have been pushed to his absolute limits. What could possibly await me there? Since the funeral, I'd been confined to my home, but now I rushed out, forgetting even to do my makeup. That was irrelevant now. My sole focus was to honor my beloved son's last wish. Driven by this singular purpose, I hurried to the address in Liam's letter. The destination turned out to be a rental storage facility a bit away from my home. Among the rows of storage units, I found the one indicated in the letter. With trembling hands, I inserted the thin, small key attached to the letter into the lock and opened the door. The small room, about the size of a half-bedroom, was dimly lit and slightly musty despite it being daytime. I pressed the switch for the fluorescent light next to the door, and the exposed bulb buzzed to life, casting a stark light across the room. "What is this?" I exclaimed, feeling an instinctive fear that made my whole body tremble. "My name is Amelia Williams, a 54-year-old part-time employee. It's been 20 years since I lost my beloved husband." He had mentioned feeling a bit unwell, and not long after, he passed away. His death was so sudden and unbelievable that I still find it hard to accept. He wasn't suffering from any serious illness and had always been diligent about his annual health checkups. Yet despite this, he left me and our son Liam behind. After my husband's death, Liam and I lived together. At that time, Liam was just in elementary school and seemed even more unable to accept his father's sudden passing than I could. My in-laws also started visiting frequently to take care of Liam. It seemed as if Liam was desperately trying to hide the loneliness of not having his father around. Despite his own grief, he even encouraged me when I would frequently panic. "Mom, it's okay because I'm here." His young voice still echoes in my ears. After losing my husband, I started working part-time to raise Liam, trying to forget the sadness amidst the daily busyness. Liam never complained even though I was often busy and away from home. He must have felt lonely too, but he never said a word and continued to encourage me. In response to Liam's support, I gradually overcame my sadness. As time passed, in middle and high school, Liam started working part-time, helping with the household finances. He did this to avoid putting too much strain on me, balancing work and his studies. He was a good student, and at parent-teacher meetings, his teachers would praise him so much that it almost embarrassed me. Despite losing his father, I am grateful every day for how wonderfully he grew up. After graduating from high school, Liam chose to enter the workforce immediately. Despite having the grades to aim for any university, he considered my situation. "I'm tired of studying," he told me, and began working at a small local factory. Liam, always quick-witted, learned his job swiftly and became well regarded at the factory. Despite the physical demands, he found fulfillment in his daily routine. Several years passed, and Liam met a girlfriend. Initially, he had preferred staying in on his days off, but now he began going out almost every weekend. As his mother, I felt a twinge of loneliness, but I was also relieved that Liam, at that age, had found companionship. Most importantly, Liam appeared genuinely happy, which brought me joy. He had always been considerate of me, steadfast in his support. Now, I wanted him to prioritize his own happiness, and I observed his relationship from a distance. When Liam turned 27, he decided to marry. His fiancée, Chloe, 2 years his senior, came with him to meet me. Compared to Liam's reserved demeanor, Chloe was a striking beauty with distinctive features. I was surprised not only by Liam's choice of partner but also by the fact they had met at a drinking party. It revealed an unfamiliar side of my son, whom I had doted on. Despite my initial surprise, I had no negative impressions of Chloe. I learned she worked in sales at a cosmetics company, which explained her ease in conversation. Our first meeting ended on a pleasant note, and soon after, they had their wedding. Liam moved out to start his life apart from me. "Mom, are you sure you'll be okay alone? It's still in the county, but a bit far." Liam worried until the very last minute before moving. Chloe also expressed concern about me living alone, even suggesting that we might live together for a while. While I appreciated their kindness, I couldn't impose on Liam further. I politely declined their offer and celebrated their new life together. Liam continued to visit me often, but I noticed he was losing weight. He had switched jobs to be closer to Chloe's workplace, opting for a sales position that seemed more stressful than his previous role at the small factory. This change had evidently taken a toll on his appetite. "You've lost weight again, haven't you? It's good to work hard, but it's serious if you ruin your health, you know." I would always express my concern whenever Liam visited home. Each time, he'd dismissively reply, "I'm fine, really," showing no intention of changing jobs. Initially, I attributed his stress to adjusting to the new job, but it slowly dawned on me that there was more troubling him. I've spoken to him, but he's so stubborn. Maybe Chloe can get through to him, I thought to myself. By the time Liam turned 30, 3 years into his marriage with Chloe, his complexion had worsened, and he'd appear physically exhausted. I often urged him, why not consider changing jobs instead of pushing yourself so hard? But he remained adamant. Perhaps his commitment to Chloe and their marriage made him feel obligated to persevere in his current role. Witnessing this, I reached out to Chloe, asking her to encourage Liam to reconsider his job situation. Chloe, visibly concerned about Liam's declining health, tearfully apologized to me, blaming herself. "Chloe, this isn't your fault. Liam has always been diligent and tends to overexert himself. Maybe he'll listen to you more than he does to me," I reassured her. Honestly, I had been growing frustrated with Chloe for not taking more proactive steps to address Liam's health since their marriage. Despite my pleas, she did little beyond apologizing. Yet I couldn't entirely fault her, so I could only watch as Liam's condition worsened. Days passed after reaching out to Chloe, but there was no response. She must have known how worried I was. Wouldn't a simple acknowledgement be normal? Frustration began to creep in over trivial matters as I grew increasingly concerned for Liam. Taking a deep breath, I decided to take the initiative and contact her. "Hi Chloe, have you had a chance to talk to Liam since we last spoke?" Carefully selecting my words, I asked Chloe. After a brief pause, her response left me stunned. A click of the tongue on the other end of the line. Chloe's voice, tinged with irritation, rushed through the phone. "Mother-in-law, I'm busy with work too. I'm watching Liam's health closely. Are you being overly protective? If he says he's fine, then he's fine," Chloe retorted, her tone unfamiliar and curt. It wasn't the Chloe I knew. Had she been putting on an act all this time? I was left speechless, sensing a wave of suspicion toward her. Chloe attempted to backtrack. "I'm sorry. I'm just worried and stressed." Despite her attempt to smooth things over, my unease lingered. For the first time, I considered Chloe a potential threat. If things continued like this, Liam could be in danger. A sense of foreboding clouded my thoughts. Yet without Liam's own admission, I couldn't intervene in his relationship with Chloe. Liam was scheduled to visit in a few days, and I resolved to broach the subject more firmly then. Was he troubled by more than just work? Could there be deeper issues in his marriage? Maybe Chloe was right, and I was being overly protective. Nevertheless, when he visited, I would listen carefully. Suppressing my restless feelings, I waited anxiously for Liam's arrival. But my judgment proved fatally mistaken, a decision that would haunt me forever. It happened suddenly. "Is this Mrs. Williams, mother of Liam Williams?" The sudden call from the police gripped my heart with a deep, searing pain. Dread washed over me, and I felt as though I might faint. It couldn't be. Even before that officer could explain, my mind raced through horrifying possibilities, trying desperately to reject them while simultaneously resigning myself to the worst. I didn't want to hear any more. Fighting the urge to hang up, I managed a shaky nod. As anticipated, it was the news of Liam's death. Liam had taken his own life. "Please try to stay calm," the voice on the other end repeated. But I dropped the phone, unable to cry. I stood in shock for what seemed like an eternity. "Why, Liam?" I called out repeatedly, feeling shattered and numb. How much time passed in that state? The pounding on my front door brought me back to the present. Concerned about the abrupt end to our call, several police officers had rushed over to check on me. Crawling to the door, I opened it to find them there, their expressions etched with sorrow. Finally, I collapsed, breaking down into uncontrollable sobs. A female officer gently embraced me, and together, we cried. This was reality. Liam was gone, and with him my beloved son. Overwhelmed with grief, I could barely recall the details of the funeral. Anger towards Chloe faded into insignificance as I focused solely on what needed to be done. There were countless words left unsaid, conversations left unfinished, but at that moment, they were lost to me. The police, seeing my fragile state, postponed their questioning. They intended to speak with Chloe, but I doubted she would divulge anything. My intuition told me Chloe was somehow involved in Liam's despair. Why hadn't I reached out to Liam sooner? Why didn't I rush to him immediately? Regret flooded my heart, leaving me speechless for a time. During this period of anguish, a letter arrived. My hands trembled as I recognized the sender's name, Liam. The handwriting was unmistakably his. Liam should have been gone for 13 days now. Panicking, I retreated to my room and carefully opened the envelope. Tears streamed down my face as I held Liam's final words in my hands. It must have been a letter he wrote before his death. With no suicide note to provide answers and the truth obscured by shadows, I was both terrified and compelled to read what Liam had written. Perhaps this letter held the key to understanding what had tormented him for so long. As I cautiously opened the letter, my heart heavy with grief, I found it filled with Liam's words of gratitude towards me. My entire body began to tremble uncontrollably, and I couldn't hold back the flood of tears. Why couldn't I have saved him? Why, oh why? The same questions echoed relentlessly in my mind. With trembling hands, as I tried to place the letter back into the envelope, I noticed another piece of paper tucked inside. "What's this?" I muttered aloud, unfolding it carefully. To my astonishment, it bore unsettling words. "Take revenge on my wife for me," followed by an unfamiliar address. Is this where Liam wants me to go? The tears had stopped, replaced now by a clammy sweat. Liam using the word revenge was unimaginable. He must have been pushed beyond endurance. What could possibly await me there? Since the funeral, I had been confined to my home, but now I rushed out impulsively. I was so consumed that I hadn't even bothered to put on makeup, but that was inconsequential now. I was determined to honor my son's final wish. With a singular purpose driving me, I hurried to the address written in the letter. It led me to a rental storage facility not far from my home. Among rows of storage units, I located the one specified in Liam's letter. Inserting the small key attached to the letter into the lock, I opened the door. The small room, dimly lit and faintly musty despite the daylight outside, greeted me. I flicked the switch near the door, and the fluorescent light buzzed to life, casting a stark illumination. What is this? Inside the room, as the light slowly brightened, I saw a desk cluttered with several photos scattered haphazardly. Strewn about were bits of notepaper, and the floor was littered with notebooks and empty bottles. It was a scene of disarray that seemed utterly unlike Liam, who was always meticulous about his belongings. A chill ran down my spine, a primal instinct warning me of something I was about to confront. Reluctantly, I focused on the photos lying on the desk and saw Chloe. But she wasn't alone. Chloe was intimately holding hands with an unfamiliar man. As I looked closer at the other photos, each one captured them together, undeniable proof of infidelity. As I sifted through Liam's meticulous notes and reports, my suspicions from the letter were confirmed. Chloe was indeed the cause of Liam's unbearable stress. While work might have contributed, it was Chloe's actions that had driven Liam to take his own life. Trembling with anguish, I frantically pored over the detailed accounts in the notebook. Each entry chronicled the date and time of Chloe's hurtful words and actions towards him, calling him useless, even physically assaulting him. The horror of these revelations tore at my heart. Why hadn't I noticed? Why hadn't Liam confided in me? These questions echoed relentlessly in my mind. Alongside Liam's handwritten records, there were professionally compiled reports, likely commissioned by him, documenting Chloe's infidelity. The photos strewn across the desk were evidence from a private investigation into her affair. I also discovered several USB drives in an envelope, which I swiftly packed into my bag. The oppressive atmosphere in the storage unit, saturated with Liam's anguish, was suffocating. Even as his mother, I felt assaulted by his unresolved resentment. "I'm sorry, Liam," I whispered, my heart filled with a seething hatred towards Chloe for what she had done to my son. I vowed to seek justice for Liam's suffering. Why did Liam have to endure such torment? Why hadn't he reached out for help? Determined to find answers and bring closure to his grievances, I returned home with the damning evidence of Chloe's betrayal. The task of confronting the cruelty Liam had endured was agonizing and self-destructive. Waves of regret washed over me, tears streaming down my face uncontrollably. Even if I exacted revenge, it wouldn't bring Liam back. But I couldn't stand idle. I forced myself to consider what to do with the evidence Liam had entrusted to me. The police would soon arrive to question me. Should I hand over the evidence then? No, that seemed too lenient. Liam had left this world hating Chloe and her lover. What could I do to ensure Liam could finally rest in peace? Just then, the doorbell rang, interrupting my tumultuous thoughts. Could it be the police already? Checking the intercom camera, I saw a familiar face. Hello, it's Smith here. The young man on the intercom camera introduced himself as Daniel Smith. He had been Liam's friend since high school. When I opened the door, Smith, dressed in a somber suit, bowed respectfully once more. I invited him inside, and he asked to pay his respects at Liam's altar, so I guided him to the prayer room. Smith carefully placed offerings from his bag and sat quietly before the altar. After a period of fervent prayer, he turned to face me, his demeanor now more serious. Adjusting his glasses, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a letter. With deliberate movements, he set it down on the floor in front of me. It was the same letter I had received from Liam. This is a letter from Liam. I understand you've also received one, he began. Liam had entrusted Smith with a similar request for revenge against Chloe, not just to me as his mother, but also to Smith. It weighed heavily on me to involve an outsider like Smith in such a personal matter. Despite my pain, I expressed my hesitation to Smith. However, he firmly rejected my concerns. Even if it involves revenge, I have no intention of crossing any legal boundaries, Smith assured me. I'm certain Liam wouldn't have wanted that, he added, looking directly at me, prompting a realization. I had been swept up in the shock and grief of losing Liam, fixating on the word revenge, without a clear plan. Alone in my despair, I might have contemplated rash actions. Could it be that Liam had anticipated this and left instructions for Smith as well? I gave you one at the funeral, but here it is again, Smith continued, pulling out a business card case from his pocket. He handed me a card bearing his name and professional details. At that moment, I recalled how abruptly Smith had handed me his card during the funeral. Reflecting on it now, I vaguely remembered him visiting our home several times during high school and attending our family events. He had always been a part of Liam's life, yet I hadn't paid much attention to his profession. His card read, Smith Law Office. It struck me then that Smith had pursued a career in law after graduating high school, a fact I had overlooked in my grief. Smith had received Liam's letter and made the decision to seek justice within legal boundaries. Despite the weight of losing his close friend, he arrived at my doorstep with a determined smile. I've closed my office for a while, he explained, smiling warmly, a familiar sight from years past. As a friend, he insisted on helping Liam and me without accepting any payment. Although Liam had sent a substantial retainer fee via registered cash mail, Smith returned it to me with humility. I can't accept this. Let me do this as a friend, as the least I can do since I couldn't help him, he insisted, bowing respectfully. I hesitated briefly but accepted the money temporarily, understanding that Smith, too, was grappling with the pain of not being able to save Liam. His compassion touched me deeply, and I resolved to consider his feelings as we navigated this together. I confided in Smith about the contents of Liam's letter and what I had discovered in the storage unit. Despite our shared urgency, I suggested we take a brief pause. You must be tired from your journey. How about some tea? I offered. Amidst the chaos, having Smith as a steadfast ally was a source of reassurance for both of us. I welcomed him as not just Liam's friend, but as a supportive presence in my own journey of seeking closure. As Smith reviewed the documents I handed him, he let out a deep sigh. This is tough, he murmured, the weight of the situation evident in his words. It was a sentiment that could have been meant for me, or perhaps it slipped out unintentionally in the midst of our shared sorrow. The man Chloe was having an affair with was named Owen Jones. According to Liam's meticulous notes, Jones was not just involved with Chloe but also knew Liam personally. Liam had documented how Jones had repeatedly threatened him to leave Chloe alone and had harassed him relentlessly. Smith, well-versed in law, explained that Jones bore legal culpability just as much as Chloe. Even if they denied the affair, the photos and evidence left by Liam would speak volumes in court. Though I lacked legal expertise, I was determined to see justice served for Liam, even if it meant bringing charges against those who had driven him to such despair. However, this meant Smith would need to step aside as a lawyer since he couldn't ethically represent them. Our goal is to present Liam's evidence to the police and ensure both of them are held accountable, Smith declared, his voice resolute yet tinged with a hint of needing reassurance. Keeping his composure was paramount in this fight for justice. I informed Smith that I would soon be meeting with the police. With the evidence we had, Shiloh and Jones would face consequences regardless of their denials. However, I felt an overwhelming need to confront Chloe directly as a mother. I wanted her to face the consequences of her actions. I shared with Smith my intention to speak with Shiloh without disclosing the existence of Liam's evidence. Smith readily agreed, understanding the urgency. Once he compiled and submitted the evidence, the window to confront Chloe might close. Time was ticking, and I decided to visit Chloe's home unannounced. Chloe appeared visibly surprised by my unexpected visit. Perhaps she assumed I would remain incapacitated by grief after the funeral. Her discomfort was palpable, knowing that her true nature had been exposed over the phone. She seemed anxious, anticipating what I might say or do. I know everything from Liam. He's gone now, but you need to apologize. Apologize to Liam, I demanded, unable to contain the flood of emotions upon seeing Chloe carry on as if nothing had shattered our lives. The words poured out of me before I even realized it. What are you talking about? Why should I apologize? What have I done? Chloe's face froze in shock upon hearing my accusation, her expression quickly shifting to one of frantic denial. I saw the fear and unease in her eyes, recognizing it as the culmination of weeks of anxiety about her hidden actions being exposed. While she might deceive others, she couldn't deceive me. I knew everything from Liam, including her affair with a man named Jones and the torment she had inflicted upon him. It's all your fault. You drove Liam to this, I said with deliberate emphasis, directing my words straight at Chloe. Predictably, she became even more agitated. I don't know. I haven't done anything. Chloe covered her ears, shaking her head in denial. Her psyche seemed fragile, and my unexpected visit appeared to have shattered it completely. She collapsed, sobbing and repeating apologies. In that moment, I regretted not intervening sooner. Perhaps if I had been more vigilant, Chloe's treatment of Liam might have changed. It was agonizing to think that such callous behavior had continued unchecked, leading to such a tragic outcome. After this unsettling encounter, I immediately contacted Smith and recounted everything that had transpired. Smith decided we should inform the police right away. He seemed surprised by how quickly Chloe had confessed. He had anticipated more resistance from her. I expected her to fight tooth and nail, but it ended rather abruptly, Smith remarked, reflecting on the unexpected turn of events. Later, I learned more about Chloe's mindset. She never imagined that Liam would take his own life. Chloe believed that by pressuring him, he would initiate a divorce without concrete evidence of her affair, sparing her from paying alimony. She intended to dismiss Jones as just a friend if confronted. It was a reckless plan born out of desperation, shared by both Chloe and Jones. Liam, in his kindness and love for Chloe, had collected evidence hoping she would repent and end her affair independently. However, he must have realized his hopes were futile. Despite everything, he couldn't bring himself to take legal action against her. Unaware of Liam's internal struggle and compassion, Chloe continued her harmful behavior, unknowingly pushing him further towards despair. After Smith contacted the police, Chloe and Jones were swiftly apprehended and taken in for questioning. Jones was promptly found guilty based on the evidence left by Liam, exposing their crimes to the public eye. Chloe, on the other hand, underwent a dramatic change. She became unable to speak coherently. Confined to a police hospital, she struggled with profound remorse and required medication to sleep. The news of their crimes spread rapidly across the nation, with Liam's death recognized as a direct consequence of their actions. Smith's expertise was crucial in securing a guilty verdict and navigating the claim for damages. As anticipated, Jones faced severe repercussions. He lost his job and became ostracized by his community, destined to endure the stigma and financial burden of his wrongdoing. Chloe's condition showed no signs of improvement, and doctors held little hope for her recovery. While justice was served according to the law, Liam's absence remained a stark reality. Had we fulfilled his final wish? After witnessing their conviction, Smith chose to return to New York. Thank you for everything. I don't know if this has brought any solace, but I hope we did something for Liam, he said with a somber expression as I saw him off. Liam was fortunate to have a friend like you, Smith. Thank you so much, I replied, overwhelmed with heartfelt gratitude. Smith, slightly flustered, responded, I just did what I could as a friend. Please don't be so formal, with a gentle smile before walking away. Without Smith's steadfast support, I might have lost my composure. I silently struggled to contain my anger and maintain composure, deeply appreciating Smith's role in calmly handling the situation. Though he was no longer present, I continued to bow my head in gratitude for his unwavering friendship and support. Afterward, Smith founded a volunteer organization aimed at assisting people burdened with various troubles, ensuring even those with financial constraints could access legal aid. Perhaps driven by his inability to save Liam, Smith devoted himself to this cause alongside his regular job, providing invaluable support to many individuals. Recently, during one of his visits to Liam's grave, Smith introduced me to his wife and their newborn child. Despite his busy schedule, he makes a point to visit a few times each year. Liam would undoubtedly find joy in this. As for myself, I decided to step away from the part-time job I had held since Liam's passing, feeling compelled to pursue something uniquely mine. Despite lacking Smith's legal expertise or influence, I believed I could still make a meaningful contribution. That's when I chose to volunteer with a local organization supporting families coping with loss, founded by a nearby internal medicine doctor. Together, we confronted the challenges faced by grieving families. Smith's support helped me find solace and heal from my grief. Wanting to extend that same support to others who, like me, had once been submerged in despair after losing Liam, I embarked on this new path. Gradually, I came to realize that this work was my calling. Not only did it provide solace to grieving families, but it also held the potential to prevent tragedies similar to Liam's. Through this involvement, I developed a close bond with the doctor who initiated the organization. Though unplanned, this connection sometimes stirs feelings of guilt towards my late husband and Liam. Yet I've come to accept that it's permissible for me to seek happiness as well. I've learned that it's okay to cherish their memories while moving forward in life. Thus, I've started a new relationship, understanding that even as I open my heart to love again, my husband and Liam will forever remain a part of me. In this way, I honor their memory while embracing my own happiness.